Hello, and welcome back to Sports Pro Live 2021. I am Sports Pro Digital Editor Tom Bassam, and joined for a very exciting session with Co-CEO of DAZN, James Rushton, for a session titled "Looking Forward with DAZN." Personally, I've been really looking forward to this session. Hello, James. Welcome in.
Hey, Tom. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Yeah, as I was saying, I'm very much looking forward to this session. DAZN's been a very sort of innovative company in the sports industry to commentate on and look at from a distance, and it's always fascinating when we can have a bit of a deeper look under the hood of what's going on over there. James, you led DAZN's overhaul of the executive team last summer amid sort of some troubling times for the whole of the media industry during the sort of first stages of the pandemic. And in January, you were named the co-CEO alongside Shay Sagev. But previously, you've held senior roles in the DAZN Group, including Chief Revenue Officer, Marketing Director of APAC, Managing Director of Australia and New Zealand, and Managing Director of DAZN Player. It's been, you've been there a while and you've seen the kind of whole journey of DAZN. So whilst today's session is called Looking Forward with DAZN, we'll be taking a little bit of a step backwards and looking at where DAZN's been in the last year and then what's going to happen in the future. So kind of to kick things off, James, it's fair to say you've been pretty busy recently. In the last 9 months or so, I think, if I'm right in saying, you've done rights deals for F1 in Spain, the Champions League in Germany, and then most recently was the big domestic rights deal for Serie A in Italy. And then alongside that, you've also launched a new global player. Let's go straight in then. What from these major strategic moves should we be learning about DAZN's direction going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. You're right. It's been a pretty busy last 12, 18 months. Listen, I think what you can take from the sort of progress that the business has made over the last 12 months, and you mentioned some of the highlights there, is we're looking at two different ways. The first thing, maybe looking externally, I think you sort of can come to the conclusion that the way we set out our business, the sort of the vision for our business to be the world's largest sports streaming platform, is vindicated, and the sort of the more successes and the more progress that we've made, it's clear that we're on the side of the consumer and fans. If you look at consumption trends of OTT and sport, it's only going one way. Um, and those trends and the subscribers that we've been able to accumulate over the past 12 months, in particular post-COVID, I guess gives us the confidence to make those investments that we've had in our existing markets, but also potentially in the future continue to grow our footprint for our global platform. The global platform is something I always get asked about, and I always try and stress the point that it is a platform. It's not a global service. So whilst we do have globally cleared rights, and we work with, for example, Matchroom on a global basis. The principle behind the global platform is yes, to be able to reach new audiences globally, but also to see how those audiences react in different markets to the product and different pricing, and where we see opportunities, we can be agile and nimble and look to go in and launch on either a pan-regional or a local market basis using the platform that's already live. And it enables us to be far more reactive and far more nimble than we were previously. And frankly, we were already pretty light on our feet. So very excited about have the global platform live. In terms of some of the things you touched on, yeah, it's been a really busy 12 months. Really pleased to be able to consolidate our position in Germany. I think moving forward into the next football season, we'll be seen, or we believe we will be seen as the go-to sort of number one platform for live football in that market, with in particular our Champions League rights and our sort of premium Bundesliga package of rights that we have. You touched on the investment we made in Formula One, and really how that sets up nicely with our investment in MotoGP. So for motorsport fans, we're a must-have. And then obviously most recently, the significant news about DAZN, I guess doubling down on our investment in Italy and moving from the sort of secondary to the primary broadcaster of Serie A next season. So again, a very exciting step. Again, I think it shows that we're on the right path as a business, and as I said, our vision as thinking that sport belongs on OTT, and the natural place for pay TV sport is OTT, is vindicated by the moves we've made in the market over the past 12 months.
For me, like the last 12 months has been really interesting when looking at DAZN, because you've previously, my kind of take on what DAZN was doing was buying up lots of kind of interesting properties, moving into new markets. I mean, you launched in Spain, you launched in Italy, you launched in Brazil, and it seemed like you guys were being particularly kind of opportunistic. Whereas the last 12 months, for me, the strategy seems to have shifted from that opportunistic kind of approach to really consolidating around what you think works in key markets. Is that kind of the rough thinking behind what you guys have been doing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, there was obviously a plan previously. It wasn't just that we were going around only looking at things opportunistically. But I think you're right. I think it's fair to say, post-COVID, there was a real reset of the business. As you mentioned, we had a change in management structure. At that moment in time, I felt that we had to get back to basics somewhat, get back to really strong planning around the unit economics of the business. And that meant a degree of focusing on consolidation on the markets that we knew that worked, really doubling down on making sure those markets were as fit and as healthy as possible, which we've done. I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment how we bounced back from COVID. And now we're sort of coming out of that process a lot fitter, a lot stronger, and a business with a lot more confidence. We feel that we understand a lot more about our consumers, how to acquire them, how to retain them, how to build out different communities within our cohort of subscribers. And so what that means is that yes, we are focused, and that's very important on our existing markets. But now, when we look to go potentially into new markets, we do so with far more confidence and far more belief in our model than maybe we previously had.
Yeah, a couple of things that I'd like to touch on there. I think the nimbleness approach of comment that you made there is probably an interesting place to start, especially with the sort of recent stuff around, let's say the Premier League rights, for example. Should the opportunity come up in the UK, and I know you've commented this previously, but I'm guessing the global platform is now what allows you to go in and say, okay, cool, we can take a look at this opportunity and see what we can do with it, right?
Yeah, listen. Talking about in theory before I set any rabbit race.
Absolutely.
No, exactly. That is the whole point. We talk a lot about the business having a codified way of working, having a real playbook as to how to, and having different playbooks for different stages of the market. And we feel we've got that now. We feel whether it be a platform playbook, with our acquisition playbook, our retention playbook, we really understand how to drive the unit economics of the business. And then, yes, exactly. Now with our global platform, we are able to look at opportunities. Whether it be Ligue 1 in France, whether it be rights in Australia and New Zealand, whether it be rights in the UK, and quite quickly and quite nimbly deploy our resources and what we call supersize those markets when and if the opportunity comes about. I think the other key thing to stress, and is one of probably our unique advantages as a business, is that we are truly global. And so we can look at different markets, different opportunities when right cycles come around, and really compare and contrast the levels of investment, the forecast level of return, the associated risk, and make quite calculated, data-driven decisions based on where next to put our incremental dollar. And you can only do that to a degree with a global platform. So that's one of the big advantages of launching the global platform last December.
Yeah, actually the global platform as well. I mean, so taking a kind of step a little bit back and looking at what happened over the course of the pandemic, the global platform was first sort of, I remember we first wrote about it before the pandemic. And then you had your executive team reshuffle. Did the plan change for the global platform over that period? And can you talk us through that? That sort of that period at the start of the pandemic last summer, where it was, all of the media industry was kind of up in the air.
Yeah. Maybe if I sort of talk about the pandemic first, and then maybe sort of reflect on how it impacted our global plans. So yeah, I mean, as I said before, I think, listen, not just for the sports media industry, but the society as a whole, it was a very challenging, and is still a very challenging environment. And clearly, the sports industry and DAZN was impacted by the same. As I alluded to before, yes, it was a challenge, but also we took it as an opportunity to really rethink to some degree what we needed to focus on, reset the business around that, and then look to go again. And thankfully, I guess because of the brand that we built up, because of the consumer proposition that we have and the quality of content that we have, whilst we obviously saw a dip in subscribers, the business bounced back very aggressively in the second half of last year, and has continued to sort of grow quite aggressively for the first half of this year. So from a unit economics and a subscriber perspective, we're pretty comfortable. What it did mean that we had to start to really think about our business plan and how we're looking to sort of commercialize and monetize our base. So if you'd asked me 2 years ago, you'd have had a sort of, at the time, a chief revenue officer talking quite passionately about subscription. by the end of this year, DAZN will be a SVOD, TVOD, and AVOD platform, looking to sort of generate as much revenue per customer as we can, and understanding that we have to be a little bit flexible in terms of our proposition and our offering to ensure that we can do that in the most efficient and effective way. We also had to look at the type of rights relationships we have. Certain rights relationships we decided to in the appropriate way move back from and sort of cancel certain contracts. We also looked to reset and redefine certain contracts. We have a very big business in Japan. We have a long-term partnership with the J League, and we were able during that COVID period, sort of first half of last year, redefine that relationship to extend it out, but also be more of a profit share based relationship, which is something that I'm personally very passionate about, and I think is way I would hope we look to work with premium sports rights holders in the future, because it gives both parties an ability to sort of grow with the business, and for those rights holders that are successful on our platform, the opportunity to generate significant greater returns than maybe a fixed fee model would. In terms of the global platform, to try and answer your question around that, then yeah, absolutely right. We clearly couldn't launch a global platform when there was no live sports happening, and I think we, thinking about what we wanted to do with that, with the live platform, and really seeing it as a platform rather than a global service, meant that we decided to really focus on our boxing service, really focus on launching at a price point that we felt would hopefully generate the maximum amount of subscribers, and really generate the maximum amount of learning we can from those subscribers, with a view that we will then, as I've already talked about, look to supersize certain markets or certain regions with incremental content in the future. And that's what we'll be looking to do in the next 6 to 12 months.
So with the global service and the way you it kind of superseded or took over from certain markets, how did you select which markets you were going to kind of roll back your service in a little bit? Because Brazil and the USA are the two that I can think of, but what was the process behind that? Was it looking at what you had, the properties that you had there, or the numbers that you had there, or a combination of that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was a business decision based on the data that we had at the time, and the two markets, as you said, we rolled back into a global platform were two of our more newest markets. Clearly, it was also linked, and it's not appropriate for me to talk about that, but it's also linked to the type of contracts we had in place in those markets and our ability to roll back and reset those markets. But yeah, and obviously, and not forgetting, how we had to deal with the internal organisation of reshaping that as well. What I would say is, drawing back or bringing those markets into the global platform doesn't mean that we have walked away from those rights or from those markets. In fact, in the US in particular, I think the way we're now approaching the US, in particular our boxing rights in the US, is far more progressive than we were looking at it sort of 12, 18 months ago. We are delivering bigger numbers than ever. I think our partners, whether it be promoters, whether it be our media partners, whether it be the fighters themselves, are more comfortable and happier in terms of the way we're working with them as a broadcast partner. So rolling back doesn't always mean going backwards as a business, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. You touched on it slightly there. You're now sort of part of a completely new look executive team, from where it was last year. What should we kind of be taking away from that? I mean, you've got Kevin Meyer, who's coming from a Disney TikTok background, mostly Disney, and then Shay Segev, who's coming from the gambling side. Is that instructive, perhaps, about what the future holds with DAZN slightly?
I mean, yes and no. And I think it's indicative of a business that wants to get the most talented people that we can in order to grow our business. And Kevin reputation and his abilities is well known in the industry. You only have to read Bob Iger's autobiography to know the impact that Kevin had on the Walt Disney Company for the past 15, 20 years. So clearly, me and the rest of the executive team, are delighted that he's in the business, an opportunity to learn from him. And listen, is also a great bloke as well, which also helps. He's sort of come into the business and really hit the ground running. Obviously, Shai hasn't started yet, but he'll be joining soon. Shai brings a wealth of experience from a technical, technology, engineering, product background, but also has ran very big, complicated, multi-market P&Ls at a FTSE 250 level with his job, his previous role, previous or current role, depending on which way you look at it, at Entain. So I think having quality executives can only be a good thing for the business. I also think it recognises the evolution of this business. DAZN was founded as a direct-to-consumer business within Perform Group, which is a B2B business. A lot of the management, some of the management of DAZN came from the Perform background, myself included. Whilst we think we're a pretty agile and adaptable management group, bringing in new executives with far greater direct consumer experience or different types of experiences, I think is a natural thing to do, especially for a business with the ambitions that we have. I wouldn't read too much into sort of the fact that Kevin is, for example, cut his teeth at Walt Disney and therefore we're going to have a massive play into the US or anything like that, or because Shai has come from a sort of gaming background, all of a sudden we're going to have a lurch into gaming. I mean, certainly the US is a business that we're in. Certainly gamification and wagering is an area that any sports broadcaster worth their salt is looking to commercialise more thoughtfully on a go-forward basis, especially a digital broadcaster as ourselves. But those two individuals in particular have been brought in because they're quality executives, nothing to do with a sort of huge change in strategy from the business.
Okay. I sort of feel like we've kind of looked back quite a lot, and although this is commenting on a deal that you've done previously, you sort of mentioned how you want this to be something that you do a lot more of going forward, and that is that Japanese that J League deal, where you've got the sort of the revenue share approach in place. Why is it that you guys are so keen on that? I remember when that deal was first announced, and you were really keen to trumpet the fact that there was not much like that being done at the time, and you want more deals like that in the future.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, from our perspective, I think the motivations are numerous. If you take it, I'll give you two examples. If you take it from a market that we're just launching into, and day one, when we launch in the market, we have 0 subscribers, or now the global platform, we may have tens of thousands, maybe even a few hundred thousand in that market, but certainly we're not at mass scale. So a risk and reward model whereby the sort of fees that we pay out to our rights holders grow in direct relation to the number of subscribers that we have, based on the viewership that they generate. Clearly, from an economics point of view, for us, is great, because we have less risk at the start. Okay, we may pay out more in the outer years. The risk profile of that type of rights deal is clearly far more interesting to us than the classic license model, whereby we have to pay upfront on day one and trust that we deliver the subscribers that we need to in order to cover those rights costs. I think in a more mature market, the reason why we like it, first of all, we think it's a fairer way of working with rights holders, and it's something that, if you look at the music industry, has been very successfully adopted by the streaming platforms and music. But what it also does is sort of reward rights holders and properties that maybe drive viewership and therefore help us retain customers rather than necessarily rights and content that drives acquisition. And for us as a business, as we start to grow through this maturity curve, of course, acquiring new customers is important, but also as important is making sure we sort of continuously engage customers and manage our churn. And that's at the sort of what we call the rights holder part and the revenue share mechanic that's based on viewership, whereby a rights holder is rewarded for the amount of viewership they generate. We think actually is a more sort of democratic way of rewarding rights holders. And we have, obviously for confidential reasons, can't give you exact examples, but we have several rights holders that work with us in that way, whereby we're writing significantly bigger checks because of the day-to-day engagement that they generate, or week-to-week engagement they generate. We're writing far bigger checks than we would have done if they were on a standard licensing deal, and that's fine by us because those rights holders deserve to be rewarded for the impact that they have on our business week on week and month on month.
I guess as well, it kind of incentivizes the rights holder and yourself in order to grow that, to grow interest in that particular property, which benefits both.
Yeah, and that's sorry. Absolutely. Yeah, the great thing about our relationship with the J League is that we are both 100% aligned on the same thing in terms of growing audience, in terms of subscribers, and keeping them. In fact, I think it's public knowledge, and if it's not, I'm sure the J League won't mind me sharing this, that they've actually, in terms of how they give out their prize money and distribute the funds down to the clubs, yes, it's obviously based on traditional metrics like position in the league, but it's also linked to the interest and the subscribers that club and that club's activities generated for the zone. And so it enables you to sort of create this sort of ecosystem where you and the rights holder are absolutely aligned and driving each other's goals and each other's businesses forward. And Mr. Murai, the chair of the J League, has always said, especially in Japan, but I think it's true everywhere, that if you can have win-win relationships where you're both aligned, then you're bound to be successful. And that's what we like about this sort of profit share, sort of rights holder part type of approach to how we look to work with rights holders than a simple licensing model. Listen, John, it would be wrong to me to say that every single partner works like we have. I would still say the majority of our rights holder relationships are on a traditional license-based model, but we hope to show those rights holders the benefits of working this other way, and hope to change that over time. That's for sure.
Kind of the next kind of part of this, I guess maturity is actually a word that you used there. Over the last year, we've seen DAZN embracing linear broadcast a lot more than it perhaps previously did. And I think it was at our last, maybe it was OTT USA, and we had Joe Markowski talking. And he was saying that when DAZN started, the idea that you guys would be producing linear networks was almost like a bit of an insult. But that seems to have completely shifted now. Is that, insult's probably Joe. What's kind of the thinking behind going down that avenue more? Is that just because you're becoming a more mature broadcaster?
I think, yeah. So listen, in short, yes, but I think there's a couple of points there. So number one, we are absolutely a digital first broadcaster and always will be. I think where we have done linear distribution deals, and I'll come back to the why in a second, the vast majority of them, certainly all of the big linear distribution deals that we've done, has a direct relationship with the OTT platform and the OTT app. So, for instance, in Italy, where we have a linear channel on the Sky platform, the customer needs to download the app, authenticate the linear channel through the app, and then they have the choice of, do you want to watch it on your OTT device or do you want to watch it on the linear channel? So, and that linkage between the digital platform and the linear channel is an important one to stress. In terms of the strategic thinking, why? We have to sort of be a fans first business, right, Sam? And if we come on to sort of conferences like this and we talk to rights holders and say DAZN is a platform agnostic broadcaster, and we want to, and I've said in the press for the last few weeks, we don't want to create refugees on technology. We want to make sure that every single person that possibly wants to can access DAZN's content. Then one has to recognise that linear distribution, again, linked to authentication through a digital app, linked to certain commercial terms, linked to a structure whereby we recognise that it's not something that we're going to be doing for the long term, but certainly in terms of being able to reach certain audiences, it's the right thing to do. And that's always been my sort of approach to linear. Is it at the heart of what we do? No. Is it something that we should do in order to make sure that DAZN can be delivered to as many customers as possible? Yes. Do we need to make sure it's always linked back to an OTT platform through authentication? Yes. And I think if you sort of keep those principles and are very careful and considered and thoughtful about how you distribute, I think it's perfectly sensible and consistent for a business that's looking to be at the scale that we are to have those type of linear distribution relationships in several markets.
That makes a lot of sense. And one thing you mentioned earlier is the different kinds of platforms that you are seeking for DAZN to kind of move into or already are embracing. So that's the SVOD, AVOD, TVOD. Perhaps if you could sort of give us an insight into DAZN's strategy going forward, the approach to that, and what we can kind of expect from DAZN maybe in the next 12 months that we haven't seen in the last 12 months.
What do you mean from a platform point of view, or generally?
Yeah, from a platform point of view, and generally, I guess too. Perhaps starting platform and then moving on.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're very fortunate that we spent a lot of time and effort in the first 3-4 years of this business building a tech stack that was focused on two things: playback quality and the playback experience, and the size of the distribution pool. So, we are as a business available on virtually every single device at home, and when you compare us to other streaming platforms, there is not many, if any, that are on as many devices or as available to as many people as DAZN is, and that includes sort of Amazon and Netflix as well. So, I think from a distribution platform, what you'll see, and you see a little bit in terms of how we initially launched in Japan. And one thing I was really surprised about, Tom, was the amount of coverage that our sort of telco partnership deal in Italy with TIM created, because everyone sort of came and said, "Oh, this is a revolutionary deal. How do you think this is going to shape your business going forward?" And I was like, "Well, we've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. We have a relationship with Telefonica in Spain. We have a relationship with NTT Docomo and now KDDI in Japan. We have a relationship with Vodafone and Deutsche Telekom in Germany." And I do think those, from a distribution point of view, continue to work hand in glove with telcos, will be an important part, an important flavour of DAZN's distribution strategy. And in terms, obviously, also as traditional pay TV networks look to become more like utility sort of marketplaces for the home, working with those traditional linear broadcast platforms, especially sort of cable and satellite platforms, moving forward as well. I do like those type of deals from a distribution point of view, because one, it enables us potentially to reach a sort of longer tail audience, a sort of a late adopter in some of the technology by doing those type of integrated sort of hard or soft bundle deals with telcos or linear pay TV broadcasters. But in addition to that, what I do like about it is that it gives us the opportunity to really push the experiences of DAZN on their set-top boxes. Enables us to try and create an experience that goes beyond sort of linear TV within a traditional linear TV environment. So I think more partnerships will be something that you'll see us continue to push on from a distribution perspective. From a business perspective, as I said, we're sort of coming into this year with a lot of confidence. We feel that we've got some real tailwind behind our business. You see that in the way we've sort of approached, the recent tender in Serie A in Italy, and we've already talked about our recent successes in Germany and Spain. I think you'll see a business that will continue to look to grow, like a business that will continue to look to invest in our existing markets, both in rights but also in original programming. We are, as a business now, really understanding. I've talked a little bit about this already. The importance of engaging with our customers and the type of content and the different type of content that we need to create weekly or daily engagement. So you'll see a lot more of original programming and news type of content being put out on the DAZN platform. And listen, we're still very ambitious. We're a global platform with an ambition to use that global platform to supersize and grow into new markets. And my ambition and Shai's ambition and Kevin's ambition is to do that and do that quite aggressively over the next 12, 18 months.
We've got a little over 11 minutes left, so I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to turn it over to Q&A. This last one, I'm going to quote something back at you here. So recently you told me
that's always dangerous.
If the circumstances are right, I can see us tapping the public capital markets or private capital markets over the next few years. I guess my question from that is, are we going to see DAZN going public, or what's going to, how is DAZN's kind of approach to financing going to change, or is it going to change in a couple of years at all?
Yeah, I think the key thing with that quote is could, not would. Listen, I mean, it's not really appropriate for me to comment more than that really on the future financing or structure of the business. We are extremely lucky, right? We have an amazing partner with Access Industries. An amazing partner for one, the size of the investment they've made in DAZN, but also their long-term sort of investment horizon in terms of how they have gave us a lot of space and a lot of patience to grow our business and really prove that the unit economics, and a phrase I've used a lot today, work. And we are, as I said, performing incredibly well. We're sort of ahead of where we thought we'd be in terms of our subscribers so far this year. We've got some real tailwind behind us, and we're very confident. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that when and if we need to think about raising money, in the future, we'll have some further comments, obviously then. But we've got a very progressive and very supportive primary shareholder at the moment, and yeah, I don't really think I need to say much more than that.
Okay, so moving to some of the questions we've got coming in. We've got a couple here about potential new markets, and I know you've talked about the global platform and how that allows you to be flexible, but they are interesting ones, so I'll go to them specifically. So one is India, and the other is the UK. Are those kind of when those opportunities come up? Are those ones you're actively looking at as areas of particular interest?
Well, that's such two different markets, right? So you wouldn't be surprised that we have in our business a rolling ongoing review of various markets around the world. The criteria that we look through for new markets is a real myriad. Penetration of OTT, adoption or willingness to pay for premium sports, what rights are available and when, how are premium sports been distributed in the past, whether it be linear sort of broadcasters, whether it be telcos who are taking on the charge of that primary sort of distribution platforms. So in short, is the UK and India sort of part of that long list of markets that we look at? Yes, of course. course they are. I think I'll go back to my comment before. Because we're a global platform and because we're a global business, we can look at things quite holistically and quite unemotionally, frankly. And we look at the data, we look at the return on investment, we look at the growth horizons and the competitive horizons of those markets, and we'll make decisions based on that rather than necessarily an opportunistic approach to a certain market with certain rights becomes available. But yeah, listen, the UK, India, 20, 30 other markets are on a list of potential markets that we are continuing researching, evaluating, and frankly, we're live now in those markets anyway with our global platform.
Okay, this one's in from Charlie Parkman and is on a lovely topical subject. So, in the likelihood that the European Super League will return in a new, more acceptable format, does the Zone have plans to acquire rights for what would be the biggest league in the world, in the world's biggest sport, no matter how damaging it may be to the game? Yeah, what's your kind of take on that?
I knew I was going to get a European Super League question. I mean, listen, Try to play this sort of with an even hand. I think everyone in the industry, including UEFA and FIFA and the Premier League, who were understandably upset by what happened with the ESL, recognise that sport and the game and football as a global game is continually evolving and needs to evolve. And you saw that with the changing of the Champions League formats that UEFA came out with a couple of days post the ESL stuff. I think from a broadcaster point of view, we want to obviously be the home of the most premium competitions in the world. That said, we also want to work with the whole of the football community and the whole of the football pyramid, and we came out quite strongly. The day of the ESL to clarify that we had nothing to do with those proposals, and we stand by our sort of partners with UEFA and with the Premier League. I think what more broadly what it does show, and what we're very conscious of this, of being trying to be a fans first business and always trying to think about how it impacts our end consumers, is that any change that one is going to make to the football pyramid in the future, and any changes that UEFA want to make, or the Premier League want to make, or the bigger clubs want to make, if you don't include the lifeblood of the sport, which is the fans, in that process, then it's going to be very difficult to make those changes. And I think that was a clear bloody nose for those clubs. They clearly didn't consult in the way they probably should have. And I do think that both the clubs involved, that the local leagues and UEFA and FIFA will make sure that whenever they look to put forward any future changes to the game, they'll do so in a far more collective way, and they'll do so having consulted the fans in a far more progressive way as well.
Okay, so I've got just a couple more questions to get through. Hopefully we can get through them in the 4 minutes that we've got left. Firstly, how sustainable is DAZN's subscription price in Italy now you are the main Serie A broadcaster?
Yeah, listen, we've been on record to say that this is something that we'll review this summer. I think, what does that mean? Well, we're a value. We recognise we need to offer value, and we will always looking to do that from a DAZN point of view. However, that also means that if you're going to invest significantly more into a market, then we will have to look at how we price that and propose that product in the market in the future. We've looked at that historically. If you look at our pricing in the US, we've had gone from sort of pricing from $5.99 to $9.99 to $19.99, and done so in a very sort of carefully considered way to make sure that the fans come with us on that journey. The same in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, where we've had one price rise. So I'm not going to sort of specifically talk about what's going to happen in Italy, but we have said on record that we are going to review the pricing and the proposition this summer, and we'll look to sort of come out with that sort of in sort of June, July time.
This one, this is a fascinating question actually, and a little bit more technical. So, when you're entering a new market, what are the DAZN techniques to recruit new subscribers as you enter?
Well, yeah, I could probably spend 2 hours answering that question alone. So I think
We'll book that in for next time, James.
no, exactly. I think, listen, the technique is the simplest way to think about it is that we obviously have to generate demand. And when we launch brand new into a platform, into a market, we spend the amount of marketing money making sure that the fans understand the relationship between DAZN and the sports they love and the sports that we've acquired. The actual demand for the game day itself, from an econometric point of view, is actually primarily driven by the sport itself. Clearly, we're going to spend a little bit of demand money around amplifying that fandom and amplifying that interest. But if fans aren't interested in a particular game or a particular sport, there's no matter how much marketing money you spend, you're not going to be able to create that sort of interest. Clearly, once we have that interest, we spend a lot of time and effort on sort of direct acquisition. We primarily do through digital channels. We've taken a lot of the direct acquisition in-house, and we do that through a brilliant in-house team working with our agency partners, but doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the algorithms and the sort of qualitative work as well ourselves. And sort of in a mature market, 70-80% of our marketing money is spent on direct acquisition rather than demand generation.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more. Let's see. Here's one that you might like. When can we expect to see Birmingham City TV as a DAZN linear channel?
Yes, that is one that I like. I mean, it is. I mean, not the Birmingham City example. For those that don't know, I'm a tragic blue nose myself. No, the integration of club channels and both ways in terms of club creating content that lives on DAZN, but also DAZN providing content to those club channels to essentially penetrate again different parts of the target market and the audience is something that we are looking at. We're looking at it in all of our markets, frankly, especially the markets where we're heavily invested in local football, Italy, Germany, and Japan. So yeah, it's an area that interests us. We want to do so for the right sort of economics and making sure that the proposition for those club channels is done in a way that adds value to both us and the clubs. It also doesn't look to burden the customer with too much of additional pricing. So looking, can you do that for an AVOD or TVOD add-on rather than driving up the subscription price is something that we are exploring in several markets at the moment. But no, it's a good question. Obviously, at the moment, our UK proposition is primarily based around boxing. So I'm not sure a Birmingham City TV channel next to Matchroom and Golden Boy Boxing would necessarily fit. But who knows what will happen in the future.
Well, I mean, I think that is a good enough place to leave it. Guys, thank you very much for all your questions. And James, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And
yeah, thanks, Tom. No worries. Good speaking to you. Take care.